it can kill a business overnight, whether it's guilty by association or by proximity. There was a possible case that happened. Someone walked in and sat down somewhere outside on the street that we're on, got put on the news. It was all over the news. The next day, every business on the street was dead. And then a couple of days later, they said, you know what, it wasn't as bad as we said it was, soz. And that fucked us all. We have been ever since.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. After restaurants in Sydney reopened, it soon became clear what kind of restaurants were thriving in difficult conditions and the ones bleeding. To much surprise, the restaurants at the top end thrived as punters splashed the cash after being cooped up. But the everyday eats that are reliant on inner city workers have been on their knees because the city is a ghost town. Clayton Wells is the co-owner and executive chef of Automata A1 Canteen. Clayton, how are you going?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Mate, you've got two restaurants almost opposite each other in that little laneway and offering a product to very different markets, and your experience of the pandemic is very different for each venue. It must be a bit of an alternate reality for you. What's it like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's well, we are living in interesting times. So look, I mean, yeah, like you said, they are literally across the road from each other. A1 being sort of a cafe, in the sort of more very casual line of things. And Automata over the road, which is fine dining, well, in my own way, offering a multi-course tasting menu, and things are very different at the moment. Things are very different, and like you just mentioned in your intro, that the what we thought was going to happen and what actually happened has been quite different.
I think it took us all by surprise, and consumers have really been out there spending money in their nice restaurants. I guess they kind of wanted to get out. What's trade been like for Automata?
Look, it's been, I mean, I won't say it's been great. I mean, it's been good. It's, it's been better than I expected, put it that way. We reopened, when we could reopen for a group of 10 guests. We were able to have 10 people. And I just think five groups of two is just a little bit boring for everybody that's involved, whether it be the customers. The atmosphere in a dining room is everything. So, so I thought, let's just open for one group of 10 people a night and just let them have their time, get back in, have dinner with each other, and sort of get back into the swing of things. And that took off just like really well. I mean, we released the first month of that and it sold out within minutes. And that sort of showed us what we were kind of walking into here, reopening again. We sort of, we were lucky enough to be able to reopen back in May, and then when we all thought we're all locked down till September. I mean, that was the kind of messaging that was being happening, and everyone was just excited to go back out again. We'd all been cooped up inside, and not being able to see their friends, and they kind of just went nuts for a good month and a half, I think. And then, obviously as things progress, they've scratched the itch and they get back out there, and things slow down in the sense of that the need to get out there and have a crack at it. That slowed down a bit, and then we sort of got back into the sort of the new normal of dining at the moment, where it's people are still having birthdays, they still want to celebrate, they still want to see their friends in small groups, they still want to see their family, but they're still being careful, which is important as well.
And your other establishment, A1 Canteen, when that landed, it was kind of the venue Sydney really needed, that everyday eats, but in that sort of canteen style. And
yeah, look, when we got that, when we got the tap on the shoulder and said, we all have to shut, we can do takeaway. There was, everybody was very quick to jump into the takeaway and everything like that, because obviously, I mean, everybody's situation is very different. whether it be a large business with lots of staff or small business or whatever, everybody has a different situation. So, and Sydney, in particular, in a city where they were pretty quick to jump on and just do whatever they could do to keep their businesses going. So then there was a lot of focus on dinner, and A1 being a cafe that's open, in the morning and in the daytime. We decided to just do takeaway, but to continue doing what we do. I didn't want to go and try and, do anything that we weren't already doing. And I thought that, people still need their morning coffee. Still, people want to have a sandwich at lunchtime. They don't want to, they don't want to eat dinner at lunchtime. So we just continued doing that for a while, and we're literally treading water. And the only reason we stayed open is to try and keep people working. And that's really the only. It was definitely not a money making exercise. It was literally just so I could keep people working. So, and that's what we did.
What was the impact on staff? With multiple venues, you must have quite a few staff. What was the challenges in that period?
Look, the challenge. I mean, the biggest challenge for me, and the thing that I still think about, and I never want to have that day again, is that the people that, I guess when they, I never want to have to stand all my staff down again. That was the most horrible day of my life, and I won't ever forget that. So, in that moment, I sort of, I drew a line in the sand and said, whatever happens here, I need these people to get back to work. I don't care about, throw all the ego and all that bullshit out of the way. And all I care about is just getting people back to work. And the hardest thing was when they, introduced the JobKeeper, which has been an absolute blessing, I must say. I'm not, and I think it's, we would all be absolutely done if it wasn't for that. And I'm very grateful. But when the other people that work for you, they work just as hard as everybody else. They pay their taxes and everything like that, meaning the temporary visa holders. When they get kind of left to the side to fall through the cracks, I mean that really sort of hurt, and I never want to have to deal with that again. It's very important to me that everyone gets treated the same.
You said that you were doing takeaway from A1 Canteen, but keeping the food as it was and true to A1 Canteen. What about Automata? Did you do a takeaway model there, or did that remain shut until there was a time to open?
Look, we had many discussions about it. I look at Automata as, when I look at Automata's food, and I see it in a different light to other people. I think it's very simple, and it's pretty straightforward. But that's just I think that's just a bit silly, right? And I guess there's doing things, there's doing what you do, but I couldn't justify trying to do what we do for people at home. You know what I mean? I think it's important. Automata, to me, needs to be in Automata. And if I was doing something else, it would have been something totally different, and therefore, a little bit pointless. So we did make that decision. We did discuss it. We threw out so many different ideas and everything like that. I had long talks with my staff, but it just kind of, we just decided to not do it, and stick with A1. I mean, during that time, I mean, my staff, all my chefs at A1 got stood down, and there was only 4 of them. When I say all of them, there's only 4 ever. But they were the ones that fell through the cracks, and my chefs at Automata were lucky enough, they're all to be permanent residents, so they kind of got looked after there. So we were all just kind of doing what we could. I had some Automata chefs working they were working at A1 in sort of rotating days, where they were just trying to keep the engine greased up. So in 4 months' time, we didn't think doing 10 people was hard. So just really trying to sort of keep motivated as well, because the other side of this sort of pandemic and what it's done is it really killed the motivation levels of everybody, myself included. It's just you find it hard to sort of get up in the morning when you don't see there's much point. So we were just literally just furiously trying to get them, and we were just trying to get busy enough so I could get my other chefs so I could get them back to work.
How have you coped with those challenges during this period?
Um, Look, I had a bit of a moment after everybody got stood down. I sort of drew a line in the sand and I went, you know what, I could spend the next 6 months crying about this, and I can be miserable and depressed, or I can just fucking get on with it, I kind of, that's what I'm kind of like normally anyway. So I decided there and then not to let it all get to me. I'm a bit of a go with the flow kind of guy anyway. So, I just went, this is shit, but what else are we going to do? Let's just get on with it. So, and that's what we've been doing.
We talked about a bit earlier that A1 Canteen was kind of that casual eatery that Sydney really needed at the time that you launched it. But Automata was also the fine diner that Sydney needed. It brought it down to a more acceptable price level. It was an offering of around 5 courses for about $88 or something. It was really accessible to everyone. Can you tell us about, it's your first venture too. Can you tell us a bit about Automata and the idea behind it?
Yeah, so I mean, my background really comes is cooking in fine dining restaurants, and as much as I love them, it's that for my first venture and into the world of owning restaurants or running restaurants, I didn't really see myself working in a sort of really fine dining venue. Still, the attention to detail with the food had to be there and everything like that, and that is always the first and foremost. But I really wanted it to be in more of a casual environment. We found the space in Chippendale, and I couldn't imagine putting a fancy restaurant in Chippendale. So, we that's what we did. I got a lot of inspiration from what was happening in Paris and London at that time. There was a bit of a revolution going on with that sort of break away from the ultra fine dining restaurants, and working at Momofuku really sort of cemented that as well. I mean, Momofuku was the first to sort of stick their finger up at that sort of classic fine dining, model, and go, why can't we fucking just do it how we want it to do? So, and that's really how we got the concept of Automata. I wanted it to be, accessible to more people who wanted to eat fine dining food, but didn't really, wanted to eat out a lot, but didn't really want to sort of commit to that price point. And I wanted it to be a bit rock and roll, a bit loud, a bit, sometimes, a bit too loud, but and that's what I wanted. So, and it came out really well. Saying that, over the years, I guess you sort of got to check yourself and see what who your customers are, if they're changing, why they're coming. I mean, when we first opened, they were coming every kind of couple of months. I was changing the menu so often, and they were coming back. But over time, they as things happen, new restaurants come in and things like that, and the new thing comes along, and we sort of a few years later found ourselves a bit more of a special occasion place, So and you've got to change with your customers and what they want as well.
You mentioned at Momofuku, your time there, you sort of saw that fine dining didn't have to be so stiff and formal. But you also, earned your stripes at Tetsuya's with, many of the sort of well-known chefs now. What was that time like at Tetsuya's?
Oh, look, I think that was definitely the moment where I really sort of knew where I wanted to be in my career. I thought, previous to that, I worked at Key for a year, and that was the sort of Key was sort of the defining moment where I went, what, I really love this, and I really want to pursue this. So, I was sort of in my mid-20s then, and or maybe even my early to mid-20s, but I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But But I kind of that was the restaurant that I went, fuck, this is cool. I'm going to work my ass off to get where, to be somewhere one day, and this is the moment. So, and then after that I worked at Tets for a few years, and I met some amazing people, and and that's how we formed our, we've got a pretty tight crew here in Sydney, and that's where we sort of that around that times where we formed that bond with everybody, many Saturday nights at the Gaslight Inn, and Darlinghurst in Crown Street.
What's this experience been like for you? You said a little earlier about that Automata has changed a little bit over the years in response to what clients want and what customers want. But how do you see the restaurants moving forward?
Oh, look, we have changed a lot at Automata, but we haven't changed a lot. We've over the years. I mean, we used to, people used to be sitting on top of each other back when we first opened. It was, we've got communal tables. They're all sort of jammed in together, and it was a bit like. And over time, when people want to have their birthdays, more birthdays come in and all that, they want a bit more room. They don't want someone sitting there listening to their conversation. And we have to move, change with that. So, we sort of made a decision. We've been gradually doing it. It wasn't one big, sort of shock to the system here, but gradually we've been sort of extending the menu a little bit. Using some, different ingredients, more, more. I'm not saying luxurious ingredients. I mean, we do use that, but we use it in certain ways. It's not just opulence. So I still think technique and creativity is very, very, very key to what we do here. So, but over time, people want different things, and they want to use your venue for different things. So that's where we spread people out. They got a bit more space. They've got a bit more time. There's no sort of strict time limits on their dining and things like that. And people have been very, very happy with those changes as well.
With the pandemic affecting both of your restaurants in different ways, how do you see moving forward with the more casual eatery at A1 Canteen? Do you have concerns about the lack of people in the city with workers at the moment?
Oh, absolutely. You look, I mean, A1 opened with a bang, which was great. It was very well received. Everybody kind of got it. You know, and then moving forward, we while we were almost locked down for the pandemic, we celebrated our second birthday, but we didn't really celebrate. We just went, restaurant. My GM Rachel, she just messaged me. She goes, "Happy second birthday," and I'm like, "Is it?" It's like, can we put that on hold? Can we put it on hold for a few months? But that clicked over a while, not long ago, and it was just kind of like, if you look even 2 years, I mean, it's not that long, but it feels like a lifetime ago. But what's happened now is that I mean, there is no one in the city at the moment, even though things are sort of supposedly getting back to normal. It's not really. I mean, the A1 was supposed to be open for as a venue for the community, the local community that is there during the day and the night. And during the day, we rely heavily on the university across the road, the ABC around the corner, on Harris Street, the TAFE, the local businesses in Chippendale, the little design studios, everything like that. And everyone's working from home. So, and it's very much like the CBD as well, where, you've got whole office towers that are uninhabited at the moment. And the businesses that are below that, that rely on those morning coffees and everything for the thousands of people that are in those buildings, they don't have thousands of people to serve anymore. So I absolutely think this is, we're in a very weird situation where, there's a reason why people put businesses in certain places, and that's to feed the community. And if the community's sitting in the suburbs in their home, working from their lounge room or wherever, they're going to their local cafe or whatever in the suburbs, and they're not going to these venues. So That's where A1's been hit really hard with this, and also the fact that we are technically attached to the Old Clare Hotel here, and you know tourism and travel is all but non-existent at the moment. So you know it's it's a bit shit.
What are the frustrations at the moment that you have, and the solutions that the government could look at moving forward that could help restaurants like yours?
Um, Look, I think with the resurgence of the the virus in its small way in Sydney, it's really kind of shocked people to the core, a lot more than it did the first time, in my opinion. Um, it's sort of very eerie out there, and people are definitely on edge. It's just not hard to see that. The I guess the thing that's really hard as a business owner operator is the announcements of hotspots and things like that. They're very they do a lot of damage. They do a lot of damage, and I think there's been a lot of sort of. I understand they need to announce things and tell the public, but it's literally it can kill a business overnight. Whether and guilty by association or by proximity, and there was a there was a possible case that happened. Someone walked in and sat down somewhere outside on the street that we're on, got put on the news. It was all over the news. The next day, every business on the street was dead. And then a couple of days later, they said, you know what? It wasn't as bad as we said it was, soz. And that fucked us all. We have been ever since. So that the damage that those things cause, I don't think is thought about. I understand if there's a big outbreak and there's and it's actually a thing, but when someone walks into a Bunnings and one person might have a cough and a sniffle, later test for COVID, and then they have to shut the whole place down and no one goes there again. I mean, it's not just restaurants; it's everything. So I think that they're very sort of quick to jump out there and go, hey, don't go anywhere near this. This is a hotspot. But if it's not a hotspot, the damage is done. And I think that that's not being thought about.
You said something interesting earlier about taking the ego out of everything. You've had a really steep rise to stardom since you've opened these restaurants and won Chef of the Year and numerous awards. But you've also been one. You said you like to go with the flow. Has this experience changed you though as a chef and the direction you might head moving forward?
Yeah, look, I mean, I tried. I've tried to always stay grounded. I've tried to always, not let things get to me, and not, I'm very. I don't let things, get into my head. So, but looking at this level-headed, in that way, I mean, I think as a chef, I guess there's sort of things that you think about in these moments and you think, do I need to fucking do this? What do I need to like, everybody's been on this sort of, and this is my opinion. I mean, everybody's been on this sort of short, fast trajectory. You've got to expand, and this is a moment where I've gone, you know what? Like, what we've got is good. Like, let's just do what let's just keep it to a couple of things. I mean, sort of pulling yourself in too many different directions can only be bad. I mean, and you might climb whatever ladder you're trying to climb up really quickly, but but the fall is very, very, very fast. So I've just tried to sort of look at the way that we do things, and just really try and focus on my people, that wonderful people that I have working for me. They do a great job. We're all very close, and I really enjoy that, and I don't want to lose that either. And I think that that's sort of been one thing that I've really sort of noticed about myself, is that I guess it's easy to get caught up in things and do things for the wrong reasons. And I really want to just do things for the right reasons now. And I've had my failures as well. I mean, that's I've made decisions that have not worked, and maybe back then it was a damage that hit my ego. But I like to think I don't really have an ego to bruise at the moment. I don't think any of us do. So we've just got to get through this moment really, and do it together. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that it all falls over and we're all out of jobs, and then we're all in the shit. So it's focusing on the staff and the people, and what we do is, and our customers as well, to give them a great thing even in these weird moments, and just to try and get through it.
Why do you love restaurants and love what you do?
Well, look, I love working with I love the people. My staff. I like being creative together. I love I love the banter, and I just love this industry. I mean, sometimes I sit back and think, shit, what would I do if it all fell apart? But I think there'd have to be, I'd miss the people the most. My staff. They're fantastic. So it's an amazing industry, and it's bloody hard, but I wouldn't change it for the world. So but it's really all about the people, the friendships, the bonds with other industry. All my mates are all chefs and restaurateurs and waiters and stuff like that, and we're the best of friends, and we all do different things, but we all come together at the end of the day, and really tight. So that's what I love about it.
You've had quite a challenging period with two very different restaurants, and it's still challenging. But has there been some positives to come out of the last couple of months?
Oh, look, definitely. Yeah, look, I mean, this sort of going back to looking after I drew the line in the sand, and I went, I'm not going to let this get to me. I'm gonna, there's silver linings to everything. I mean, but you've got to stop to be able to see it. And that's where it was good. I mean, we literally, it was a mandated stop. You have to stop for a moment, and it's like, okay, well, I spent, 9 weeks coming home at 6 o'clock at night. I've never done that in 20 years.
Yeah.
I spent every night with my partner and my dog, and cooked dinner at home. I mean, I cooked dinner every 3 months at home before, and now I was cooking it three or four nights a week. So it's little things like that. I mean, it makes you see the important things. But when we're all caught up in our own, with our own things going, 100 miles an hour, you just don't have time to see it. So, looking after each other, spending time with your family, and trying to looking at other things to do, other things in your life that are important, that you just have never found time because you've always been too busy. I mean, that's on a personal level, that's definitely been a big one for me.
You mentioned earlier that you see your food, particularly at Automata, as quite simple, and yet it is elegantly simple on the plate, but it's pretty extraordinary food. How do you create the dishes that you do there? Where does it start, and where does it end?
Good question. I I don't know what other chefs work like. I kind of only know the way I work, and I work in a really sort of backwards, weird way. It all begins with one little tiny thing, whether it be a color or a one ingredient, or it could be a sauce or something like that, and I kind of go back the other way to create something. So it might be a flavor combination of two things, and then that sort of morphs into and the protein that I add. Let's say it's a protein dish with protein. The protein is always the last thing. I never think of a dish itself. It never, ever, ever works that way. It always just begins with one thing and then another thing. I mean, you know, I have like, I just fuck around and make a lot of different things. I go through supermarket shelves in like, Chinatown. I'll drive out to Tokyo Mart at Northbridge and just wander through it. And, people keep asking me if I need anything. And I'm like, no, I'm just looking. But like, I just buy stuff and I just smell it, taste it, and play around with it. Sometimes it's disgusting. Sometimes it's amazing. So, it's a lot of trial and error, but I always come up with the little bits and pieces, and have them always just like in a fridge and, in an annoying place, with all in the way of all my stuff. And they keep coming up to me and going, "Hey, chef, do you still want this?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's good, it's good, it's good. I'll use it one day." It's like, but that's kind of how I start. And I start with little tiny things. It's the smallest little thing where it begins, and then I kind of reverse engineer it, really. So that's sort of how it works.
You mentioned that you're cooking at home more than you ever have. Will that experience of cooking at home so much change the food you do in the restaurant?
Yeah, look, I think it will. My partner Tanya is a very good cook, and we cook together at home. We fight a bit, but that's normal. But in the kitchen, that is. But who's in whose way. But no, look, we've been cooking at home quite a bit. She's she if we have pasta, Tanya cooks it because she's the best. She does better pasta dishes than I do. But we've been trying to do as much cooking as possible, but and I think that's sort of the simplistic way that you cook at home. Otherwise it's too time consuming and costs you a bloody fortune. In small ways it'll find its way in there. We still try and come up with new and interesting ingredients or dishes at Automata, but definitely just something as simple as some anchovies with a burrata and some good olive oil. I mean, that's definitely crept its way into to some of the dishes at Automata previously as well.
Well, mate, as you know, I've always been a huge fan of your food, so I'm very much looking forward to see what does emerge from COVID for Automata and A1 Canteen. Been awesome to have you on Deep in the Weeds today, mate. Keep in touch.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, mate.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.